Good evening, I'm Susan Ormiston, and this is The National.
I was surprised, then thinking, is this for real?
The outcry after a controversial leader who leaves his own country for healthcare gets made a UN health ambassador. Donald Trump hypes soon-to-be-released files around the JFK assassination, and it's catnip for conspiracy theorists.
You know, the first reaction is gasp because everything is burned.
The dangers of deadly ammonia leaks after 3 men died at a BC hockey rink. Plus, the insiders are back. Jamie, David, and Kathleen on 2 years of Justin Trudeau and the 2 years left. Angelina Jolie, Audrey Hepburn, Robert Mugabe. What do they have in common? Well, all have been appointed at some point as goodwill ambassadors by a UN agency. If that last one, Mugabe, sounds a little off to you, you're not alone. Amid a global outcry, today the World Health Organization has screeched into reverse, yanking Zimbabwe's infamous 93-year-old president from his post. Mugabe is known more for promoting political repression than public health, and now the world is wondering, how did this happen? Lorenda Redekop has the story.
Robert Mugabe has been accused of human rights abuses and destroying his country's healthcare system. The 93-year-old has held power in Zimbabwe for 37 years, but he lasted just days in this role. The World Health Organization's Director General released this statement, confirming he had decided to rescind the appointment and thanking people for voicing their concerns. Concerns shared by the Prime Minister.
Quite frankly, I thought it was a bad April Fool's joke.
So what was your reaction when you heard that Mugabe had been appointed?
I was initially quite surprised.
Anne-Marie Kamanye leads an organization that delivers health care in Africa. She says Mugabe has been bad for Zimbabwe.
We've seen a collapse in the health system in that there's not enough doctors, not enough nurses, not enough midwives. The health system is actually not able to respond as well as it used to.
Mugabe himself flies outside the country for his health care.
Robert Mugabe originally was a revolutionary leader, but he frankly has exhausted his political capital among African leaders.
The WHO is led by a prominent former politician from Ethiopia, widely known as Dr. Tedros. He's the organization's first head from Africa. He had said Mugabe could use the role to influence his peers in the region.
It is an error in judgment, and it is damaging to the WHO, unfortunately.
Well, Dr. Tedros is a new leader. Hopefully this is a very important first lesson. I think the international community and those who care about health in the world will be watching very closely to see what happens next.
For an appointment that's supposed to bring goodwill to the WHO, for the moment, it's brought the opposite. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
For everyone from historians to the idle curious to those in tinfoil hats, this is shaping up to be a banner week. The U.S. National Archives are going to release all the remaining documents relating to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. There were suggestions the White House could postpone or block the document dump. But as Paul Hunter explains, Donald Trump isn't one to say no to a conspiracy theorist.
November 1963, and on that glorious day in Dallas, who knew what was then just about to unfold?
The president's car is now turning onto Elm Street.
That's right, it was the dawn of the grandest conspiracy theory of them all.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route.
John F. Kennedy shot and killed by a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, or so went the official version.
That's an unconfirmed report.
If you believe the polls, more than 50 years later, and millions of Americans still think that finding either leaves out incriminating details or is simply full-on false. Some blame the Russians, the Cubans, the CIA, LBJ, Freemasons, or somewhere, somehow, UFOs. Now, maybe, finally, once and for all, clarity. This weekend, Donald Trump tweeted he will be allowing the long-blocked and classified JFK files to be opened. Thousands of them. U.S. law has long set this Thursday as the deadline to do so unless the president intervenes.
We have to see, is it real?
Of course, Donald Trump is no stranger to conspiracy theories. He once led the so-called birther movement with its allegation Barack Obama was ineligible to be president.
He may not have been born in this country.
And last year, citing the National Enquirer, Trump said this about the family of then presidential hopeful Ted Cruz.
His father was with Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald being, shot.
Talk about bringing everything full circle. Will all now become clear on Thursday? Say experts, don't count on it.
I'm hoping we're going to learn a lot more about what the CIA knew about Lee Harvey Oswald before the assassination.
Some juicy tidbits, maybe. A rethink of everything? Unlikely. So, what can be said for sure?
It's official now. The president is dead.
It's one of the most studied moments in U.S. history. And the truth is, these final details may well change nothing, whether you believe them or not. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
The fact that the JFK documents are being released this week isn't due to standard government policy. It is the consequence of a Hollywood film.
Shots rang out.
Oliver Stone's 1991 film JFK seamlessly mixed facts with fantasy to fuel conspiracy theories for years.
I have taken, I think as a good detective would, all the clues that have presented themselves, put them into one mosaic, followed those clues, and come to some conclusions of my own.
It sparked so much talk of government cover-ups that in 1992, the White House signed a law to fully declassify the records within 25 years. An evacuation order has been lifted in Fernie, BC. 5 days ago, a suspected ammonia leak at a hockey arena killed 3 men. The gas is a popular refrigeration agent found in rinks across Canada. And as Briar Stewart reports, some are calling for greater oversight to make sure this doesn't happen again.
On any other weekend, the Fernie Rink would be one of the busiest places in this mountain community, but today it remains closed. Nearly 100 residents forced out of their homes have now been allowed to return, but this is a city still racked by grief. A memorial is now being planned for the 3 men who were killed after Tuesday's deadly ammonia leak.
To honor 3 amazing men, to support their families and each other, and to show their families how much they will be missed.
An investigation into what happened at the arena is still underway.
Don't have their lives lost in vain.
The deaths were a scary reminder for Karen Magnuson. The former world champion was getting ready to coach in 2011 when she says she was blasted by ammonia in a North Vancouver rink.
The first reaction is gasp because everything is burnt. Come on, go. Come on, get it.
Today, she says she still feels burning in her lungs and says she has joint damage from all of the medication she was on after the accident. Of the approximately 2,500 rinks across Canada, ammonia is used in more than half of them. Experts say there aren't a lot of options for creating cooling systems, which is why it's still so prevalent.
It's a good chemical for refrigeration. If you do it correctly, you have to manage this risk with proper maintenance.
It is so toxic.
But Magnuson says she fears that's not always being done.
I just hope that they follow up because at some point it's not going to be one person, me, 3 people dead in Fernie. It could be 100 families that are in that arena.
That's why she's urging officials to take a closer look at the procedures in place in rinks across the country to ensure more leaks don't happen and other communities don't suffer the same kind of tragedy. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
It was an elaborate plot by would-be terrorists blow up a Via passenger train in southern Ontario. It never happened because the plan was foiled by an FBI agent who infiltrated the group. 2 men would ultimately go to jail, but the agent who exposed them has stayed in the shadows until now. He's just written a book, and he agreed to an exclusive Canadian TV interview with the Fifth Estate's Habiba Nosheen. The agent still works undercover, Habiba, so why was he talking out?
I think he really wanted to have his perspective out there. He's a Muslim FBI undercover agent. And to many people, he says that being patriotic and American and also working on terrorism seems like an oxymoron. And he says his life story is a testament to the fact that it's not. But we did go through extreme lengths and negotiations with the FBI to be able to sit down with him, including Hollywood-style makeup that completely changes his appearance. The man you will see is not what he looks like, and also his voice has been altered in order for him to tell his story for the first time. So he tells you what?
He tells me about the train plot.
What does he say?
He says that the dear brothers that I mentioned to you in my apartment yesterday overseas, that I'm in contact with, they gave me a project of the train. And he goes into...
And this is Al-Qaeda he's talking
This is Al-Qaeda. He tells me that one of the plots was to derail a train in the greater Toronto area.
And we're going to hear more from him on the Fifth Estate this Friday. Thanks, Habiba.
Thank you.
Coming up.
They support him precisely because he drives the rest of America crazy.
Conservative author and commentator Andrew Sullivan on the forces keeping Donald Trump in power. 46 homes northeast of Edmonton were evacuated today after a train jumped the tracks. 13 cars ended up in a twisted heap, almost all of them carrying crude oil, and some were leaking. Those leaks have now been stopped, and no injuries were reported. Quebec's ban on face coverings while giving or receiving public services is prompting strong reactions. Those who support the bill says it's needed to defend Quebec's modern secular tradition, but others say it is discriminatory. Simon Nakonechny met with people on both sides of that debate.
Afifa Solomon is doing something illegal, riding the subway in a niqab.
Throughout the whole bus ride, I have to uncover my face. Like, what is the reason behind it? What did I do? What crime did I commit that I have my fundamental rights violated?
The 19-year-old Montrealer took the metro with her family and friends to protest Bill 62, Quebec's new face covering ban. They were joined by about 50 others, most of them non-Muslim.
Even if you believe that the niqab is oppressive in some way and that women are struggling with this, if that really is a problem, cutting them out of public transit and access to education and medical care is simply not the solution.
Premier Philippe Couillard's Liberals passed Bill 62 on Wednesday. The party says it's about establishing the neutrality of the state. There's been opposition, but also support.
This is a misogynistic, repressive, man-made social practice. We have fought against this for centuries and decades, and all of a sudden it's cropped up in this country where it is being used politically, and it's shocking to see that our politicians have been so befuddled by this.
A lot of the befuddlement seems to be coming from those tasked with enforcing the law. The Union of Quebec Municipalities says the bill puts cities in an untenable position when it comes to delivering services like public transit to citizens. Montreal's mayor agrees.
It's important to send a strong message that diversity, we can have great principle, but we don't want to perceive as we're stigmatize anybody.
For now, those who ignore the law won't face sanctions. The province has yet to provide any rules on enforcement or punishment, but those could come within a few days. For Solomon, that may mean choosing between her ride to school and her religion. Simon Nakonechny, CBC News, Montreal.
CBC News has learned that tomorrow, Canada's Foreign Minister, Chrystia Freeland, will appoint Bob Rae as a special envoy for the Prime Minister to Myanmar. He'll focus on what more Canada can do to deal with the humanitarian and political crisis with Rohingya Muslims there. In recent months, the federal government has been trying to stem the flow of people crossing illegally into Canada from the U.S. And tonight, we're learning that the public safety minister has asked his American counterpart for more assistance. Alison Crawford has those details.
Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale says he needs help from the Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Elaine Duke, to deal with the recent influx of asylum seekers from the United States. Speaking to CBC News this afternoon, Goodale said he made several asks of his American counterpart. First, to be aware that several American policy decisions affect the U.S.-Canada border. This summer, of course, Haitians streamed illegally across the border after the U.S. announced there would be no more extensions of the temporary protected status for Haitians who went to the U.S. after the 2010 earthquake. Goodale also asked Duke to keep a very wary eye on visas issued by the United States.
We have asked them to go back upstream and examine the pattern of these travel documents being issued and how come the people to whom they were issued appeared to have no intention of staying in the United States, but were simply using the documents as vehicles to get into the United States and then make a beeline for the Canadian border.
Goodale also mentioned the U.S. is giving serious consideration to putting up signs on the U.S. side of the border to tell those looking to cross that doing so is illegal and they could be arrested. Alison Crawford, CBC News, Ottawa.
Voters in Japan have given Shinzo Abe a big win and another term as the country's prime minister. Abe called a snap election in part to build a stronger mandate to respond to the threat from North Korea. He wants to change Japan's long-standing pacifist constitution. Final results won't be known until tomorrow, but the victory will make Abe Japan's longest-serving leader. After 3 weeks in jail, a prominent critic of Vladimir Putin is free, and Alexei Navalny went straight to another rally to address his supporters, even though he was thrown in jail for violating laws around organizing rallies. Navalny wants to run in Russia's next presidential election. Coming up, the insiders are back. Halfway through Trudeau's mandate, we take a look at the road ahead.
You can't just sit back and play with your own little world. There are other worlds out there. Lots of them. And you can't just ignore them or brush them aside. You see, the world you know is really made up of lots of other worlds, and all of them have their own problems, which, in fact, become your problems. And worlds aren't made up simply of problems. Good things happen, exciting things. And they all affect you. The thing is to understand what's happening. And to understand, you have to have a complete and comprehensive view of matters. And where to get this information? It's easy. The national news, nightly, on CBC Television. So welcome other worlds into your life. It's almost fun. The national news.
5 nights a week in the national newsroom of CBC Television, the stories come in from all parts of the world to be interpreted and prepared for use on The National. The facts are checked and the backgrounds gathered. On-the-spot reports are collected. Then the films and the tapes are evaluated and edited, readied for the air. CBC's correspondents in all corners of the world report and interpret the news. Wherever things are happening, you'll get the complete information right here on CBC Television.
I'm Warren Davis. Those are just some of the things that go into The National. Join me.
From here, each day at 1 o'clock, Canada is given the exact time. 60 Canadian radio stations relay the signal to the nation.
The CBC brings you the Dominion Observatory official time signal. The beginning of the long dash, which follows 10 seconds of silence, will indicate exactly 1 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. 1 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time.
Well, Justin Trudeau's Liberals campaigned on a lot of big promises and faced high expectations when they swept into office. 2 years in, some of those promises remain unfulfilled, and for some, momentum has slowed. But there are 2 years left in their mandate. So what should we expect? Here to talk about that, the insiders, Kathleen Monk in Ottawa, Jamie Watt and David Hurley in Toronto. I'm going to start with the middle class because we heard a lot about that during the campaign. Jamie, has he delivered on his promises to make the middle class prosper?
Well, I think he's got a good start on it. He promised to do three things when he was elected, essentially. One was to cut taxes for the middle class and those aspiring to join it. One was to spend money to get infrastructure going. And three was not to be Stephen Harper. And I think, you know, all things considered, he's done pretty well on those things. There's always a bit of a lull at the midterm, and so I think he's going to have to take note of that. But I think they're in pretty good shape, all things considered.
David, do you think the middle class feels like they've prospered under this government?
Well, I think they certainly are better off under this government, and I think because of the tax cuts that Jamie mentioned, but also the massive redistribution of the child benefit. And I think that that's where I would encourage the government to keep focused on. They shouldn't get complacent about a strong economy, because for a lot of Canadians, whether the GDP is going up, whether the unemployment rate is low, doesn't tell them anything anymore about their own personal fortunes and whether they're better off or worse off. And the government was on the right track, intervening to address the excesses of what the market is delivering in terms of compensation to people, and they need to keep focused on that regardless of what the macroeconomic metrics are.
Okay, so Kathleen, David mentioned the economy. It's growing. We're in a good growth phase. How much does that help the government? And if it weren't there, how much in trouble would they be?
Yeah, well, listen, I think there's going to be the fiscal update this week, Tuesday, and there's going to be lots of good news. If we rewind actually 2 years ago when this government was first elected, there were darker clouds on the horizon economically for this government. But it's turned out that Trudeau's sunny ways have in fact been a bit sunny in terms of the economy. But the challenge that this government has going forward is really going to be making sure that those like the people that David has just described, you know, who are feeling squeezed, who don't feel that they can make ends meet, who are having a harder time in the economy, actually get a bigger part of it in the next 2 years leading up to the next election. So he's going to have to focus on policies. I would suggest things like childcare, things like that actually impact not only women's ability to get into the workforce, but actually help the economy overall.
But Susan, one of the Prime Minister's lucky breaks comes from a macroeconomic indicator, which has very micro implications, and that's housing prices. As long as we have a robust housing market, all those Canadians that own homes feel that they're definitely better off, feel that they definitely have more money. And that is something that inures the Prime Minister's benefit, even though it's not of his own making.
But there are those out there, and we've seen it reflected in some polling, that suggests that the government has not delivered enough 2 years in, halfway. David, where are they vulnerable?
Well, I think that there's, you know, they probably lost a little steam on their economic agenda in the course of the last budget. I think the first budget really laid down some significant markers, as we've been talking about. And then the second budget really didn't seem to advance those as much. And so perhaps Canadians have gotten the impression that the government's taken its eye off the ball on this working class, middle class fairness issue and is maybe a little too focused on other kinds of things and perhaps advancing some identity politics agendas that people don't think are as important. And I think if they've got a weakness and a vulnerability, it's keeping their eye strongly focused on economic issues.
Kathleen, we've got a new Democrat leader and a new Conservative leader. How is that going to change the next 2 years for the government?
Well, the previous 2 years, they really haven't had any opposition, or at least their leaders haven't been established. So certainly I think that now there's Andrew Scheer and Jagmeet Singh. The Parliament and politics are going to take a little bit different turn. I think in Jagmeet, New Democrats were, interestingly, they took a bit of a risk, but they also have some high rewards possibility. I think particularly when we look at things like Bill 62, this very hateful bill that's come out in Quebec, I think that his ability to wedge Justin Trudeau on this issue will be very effective.
Jamie, what about that Bill 62? Is there some sensitivity that the government should do something and isn't, or how is that going to play out?
Well, this Bill 62 is exactly the kind of problem Justin Trudeau doesn't want to have, because it runs completely contrary to his positive, upbeat, sunny ways agenda that he's been trying successfully to bring forward. And it's wedge politics. You know, that's why it's being done in Quebec, and it will give Mr. Singh an opportunity to wedge the Prime Minister. So I'll be very interested to see how he gets out of this pickle that he's going to find himself in. It's going to be ugly all the way around.
What's the pickle, David?
Well, the pickle is that there are a lot of people in Quebec who must support this measure, or the government wouldn't be introducing it. And I think that in English Canada, there are a lot of people that expect the government to stand up for individual rights and human rights and to shut down this and challenge this legislation. The problem is that is the quickest way to give the separatist element in Quebec their dream, which is that this turns from an internal Quebec argument to a fight between Quebec and the rest of Canada. And so I think it's far better for the feds to sit back and let a charter challenge come from inside Quebec rather than for the federal government to lead the charge in shutting down this legislation.
Going from that to immigration, we've heard a lot about the refugee issue, border crossers from America into Canada. People are unhappy with the illegality of that in some people's views. Is the government trying to manage that, and how are they doing, Kathleen?
Well, I think they were quite effective in their first few years in government, the first 2 years in government so far, in terms of embracing Syrian refugees. I think bringing in over 40,000, I believe, Syrian refugees into Canada. How that continues to play out in the years ahead, we'll see. I know that Canada has a strong program in terms of community support of refugees, in terms of family sponsors from communities. That's being exported now to the world. That's a good thing. But how the government manages it in terms of illegal border crossing, that presents a whole bunch of new problems for them.
David, what do you think on that? Is the government ahead of Canadians on that?
Oh, I don't think that there's much question that the government has a more liberal and open immigration policy than probably would be the consensus in the country, and that has generally been the case throughout different incarnations of governments in this country. And Canadians shouldn't be complacent about how open they are to newcomers. A lot of people are, but there's also a lot of pushback against this. So this is something that the government has to be careful to continually, and it's not just the government. This is something that requires all of the leaders of our country and all parties to speak toward, to make sure that there's a consensus at the official level around these things. That's why George W. Bush the other day was so interesting to say that bigotry has been emboldened in their country by Trump and by other conservatives. So it's really the job of all the leaders in the country to try to maintain a lid on what could be anti-immigration sentiment.
But Susan, you know, as generous as this country is towards newcomers and towards refugees, and it's very generous, Canadian people don't like queue jumpers. And so that's where the government and civil society generally have got a challenge on their hands. People who play by the rules and are admitted under various programs, refugee programs, immigration programs, one thing. People that walk across the border, jump the queue and whatever, that's something else. And that's where it gets tricky as a public policy issue.
So we've only got about a minute and a bit left. Kathleen, on the world stage, clearly Trudeau has made a name for this government. Canadians recognize that. Is that generally a positive thing at home, or are people saying that doesn't translate domestically?
Well, I think ultimately you can have as many columns as you want in Vanity Fair or the New Yorker about your socks or your hair or your international presence, and it doesn't really count for votes in rural BC or in central Saskatchewan. And that's ultimately what the party will be focused on in the lead up to the election in 2019. Liberals have to be careful of getting too close to the sun, that kind of arrogance and that entitlement. And sometimes those spreads, those large columns in magazines like Vanity Fair, reinforce that at a local level.
Okay, a quick word from each of you on that subject, Jamie.
Actually, I see it a little bit differently than Kathleen. I think that my colleagues in my London office tell me that Trudeau has made a massive change in brand Canada, and I think you're going to see that translate into all kinds of good things for the country. I think the media is going to start reporting that, and we're going to go from a fanboy kind of approach, which we have right now, to the actual benefit that reputation brings Canada as a whole. I think it is going to be a win for his party here.
David?
Justin Trudeau, because of his name recognition around the world, is the most important and most influential Canadian Prime Minister globally in history. On all of the big issues confronting the planet, climate change, migration of peoples, making globalization work, he's perceived as the exemplar of small L liberalism and the anti-Trump. This is an opportunity for Canada to exercise influence like it never has.
All right, good place to end. Thank you very much, David, Jamie, and Kathleen. I'm sure we're going to talk more about this as the days go on. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks. From Trudeau to Trump, conservative author Andrew Sullivan says Twitter helped elect the U.S. president.
It has eviscerated the role of reason. He is the master of Twitter because he is all feeling and no mind.
Our conversation is coming up next on The National.
It was middle-class Canada on wheels, a convoy of buses carrying hundreds of homeowners protesting against Canada's soaring interest rates. Most of the protesters face crushing mortgages of more than 20%. Some face losing their homes altogether. All of them are angry.
I'm angry and I'm helpless.
I just feel helpless. I mean, what are we going to do?
I'm just sick and tired of this kind of a government.
Vince and Linda White are typical. This month, their mortgage payments go from $650 to more than $1,000.
I think there's something has to be done about it. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, too many people are losing their homes.
As the so-called convoy of anger rolled on towards Ottawa, federal Liberal MPs were meeting in special caucus. Like the protesters, their message was the federal government must do something for homeowners. When the buses arrived on Parliament Hill, they were met by opposition politicians, but there was no one there from the Trudeau government. The demonstrators went ahead and told their stories anyway.
I'm sick of an economic policy that tells me that after 5 years of blood and sweat and tears that I can't have my home anymore. I want to know why. Why can't I have my home?
Later, a small group was allowed to meet Housing Minister Paul Cosgrove.
All we are getting from you people are shrugs. Well, tighten your belts, but we've done it as tight as we can do it.
We're the people you're working for. We put you in office, and believe me, we can take you out.
We don't want promises. We want people who are out of their homes now, to have action now. Not after the budget, not after promises, but now.
False prophets.
I don't know what the particular response will be, but I'll tell you that the government will meet its commitment in the speech from the throne when we started out as a Liberal government last year that we will not stand by and see large-scale foreclosure of people's homes in this country.
As the Liberal caucus broke up, MPs emerged smiling. They'd been told help was coming for homeowners. And Cosgrove announced that he'll ask Canadian banks and trust companies to stop foreclosing on Canadians, at least until after next month's budget.
I know that the companies have said that they'll look to all devices that they can to assist people to maintain home ownership.
Prime Minister Trudeau left the caucus meeting apparently confident that he'd cooled out his angry backbenchers. The angry homeowners will have to await the outcome of a special two-day cabinet meeting which begins tomorrow and the resumption of Parliament next month before they learn the extent of government plans to deal with the interest rates crunch.
This president has waged a war on the truth.
That has nothing to do with democracy.
This is a crisis.
And here's where we are. He's draining the swamp.
Earlier this month, the Munk debates took on Washington politics. The regular debate series posed the question, is Donald Trump precipitating a crisis of American democracy?
Break up the system.
Both sides took to the stage in Toronto, making their case before a sold-out audience. Former U.S. Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, led the con side.
America is once again reinventing itself.
And he elaborated his politics with Wendy Mesley.
It's been several months that he's been president. He still has your trust, your support?
I think that what he's doing to shake up Washington is what America needs.
Borrow more money.
For the pro side at the Munk debates, blogger, author, and editor Andrew Sullivan.
Who represents a threat to the core values of American democracy and the stability of the country.
And we asked him to tease out his position for us. Andrew, welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
So you're a conservative, but you're anti-Trump. Now, is that a tribe that's growing?
I would like to think so, but it seems actually the forces within the Republican Party are so intense. The tribalization of America has become so deep that it's very hard to find people capable of taking a nuanced position anymore.
Now, is your opposition to the current president against the man, against his leadership, against his shaking things up?
Against the man as a fundamentally unfit human being to run a whelk stall, let alone the United States.
That's pretty harsh.
I don't think
unfit human being.
I think if he becomes CEO of a major publicly traded company, he would be removed on January the 21st.
But Andrew, he was democratically elected.
Yeah.
You know that.
Of course he was. He's a legitimate president.
He has a huge base that's seemingly still there to a degree.
Yep.
So how do you explain that?
I explain it by the way that the United States has polarized such that anybody on one side will be defended by at least 2/3 of their tribe, whatever they do. And if only because that person, I think, is in some ways spiting the other side. They support him precisely because he drives the rest of America crazy.
So when you say he's an unfit man to run America, what particularly were the things that drove you to that conclusion?
First of all, his assault on the truth. The fact that he lies and lies and lies on a daily basis more than, I mean, most politicians lie, okay? They spin, they twist, they try and shade the truth to advance their interests. We're all used to that. The Washington Post has tallied the number of direct falsehoods, denial of reality, that he has uttered since he took office. It's over 1,300 now. That means he's doing it multiple times a day.
So what is it going to take then to shake up that tribal support?
I don't think that tribal support will ever end. And the important thing is not to push it to such an extent that it becomes stronger in resistance. I think he's buoyed to a certain extent by his inheritance of a growing economy, by record low unemployment rates, by a booming stock market, mainly because he hasn't been able to do anything yet to derail that. It might take a serious attempt by the Democrats to win back one of the houses in the Congress in the midterms, or it might, I'm afraid, take place after a catastrophe. The way he is dealing with the real threat of a dictator in a totalitarian country with nuclear weapons, by calling him names, by actually saying out loud that he would destroy the entire country, not the regime, the entire country. The way he is playing absolutely into the narrative of Kim Jong-un is terrifying.
Is it not possible, as some have suggested, that tough talk is the right response with North Korea? That in fact, Trump may be able to negotiate a deterrence deal that he could take into another election?
It's possible as long as you also have engagement at the same time. It's possible as long as your Secretary of State has a way of talking to the other side.
Now, is this current presidency going to lead to something new in American politics?
I just can't say. I don't see any evidence of that happening anytime soon. There's a civil war going on within the Republican Party right now between sane conservatives and what one can only call reactionary radicals.
So where do what you call sane conservatives go? Like, what do they do in this situation?
I think the sane conservatives within the executive branch, within the cabinet, should invoke the 25th Amendment as soon as possible.
Meaning?
Meaning the mechanism constitutionally by which a large majority of the cabinet has to agree the president is temporarily or permanently unfit to conduct his own office.
How likely is that?
How likely is it that his own Secretary of State is calling him a moron? How likely is it that no one in the cabinet actually has stood up against those positions? If you see it close up, I'm told, it is terrifying. This is a man that will go into a blind rage and do things that are absolutely counterproductive and even self-destructive.
I want to ask you particularly about this whole idea of blogging, texting, Snapchat, Instagram, the whole social media world that we live in, especially with this president who seems to use Twitter as his own personal lectern with no filter. You quit that world very definitively after doing a blog, a standout blog for so many years. You quit.
The reason I quit it was because I think it is destructive of the human soul and the human mind, that you cannot actually sustain real thought by having your synapse react every minute to another synapse. That those forums, far from enlarging the possibility of debate, has become instead a force behind this polarization. I mean, Twitter is a mass intimidation machine of mobs of people attempting to harass, expose, and humiliate people of a different view.
Well, that's its most negative characterization. But
I don't see any positive one out there.
You don't see it as a marketplace of ideas, of people being able to access discussion that weren't able to before?
I don't think so. I think it has eviscerated the role of reason and elevated the importance of feeling and emotion in a time when the opposite is actually required. I think it is no accident that this president is a product of that time, that he is the master of Twitter, because he is all feeling and no mind. He's all reaction and no strategy. He is Twitter made manifest. And it's a way in which he's actually not being president. He's essentially acting on Twitter as if he was a rather alienated teenager on 4chan or on a message board just venting. Or, what he is, a 70-year-old Fox News viewer shouting at the television. That is not how a president behaves.
But I can hear even non-Fox supporters shouting at you now, saying it is in fact that liberal elite that we wanted to unseat and shake up, and he's doing it. He's not perfect, but he's doing it.
Yes, I agree with them that many of the forces and ideas that helped Trump win are legitimate, that liberal elites have become far too smug and isolated. But what I think is that issues of trade, of mass immigration, of automation, the insane, what I regard, multiculturalism of the PC left, which has alienated so many people, fomented the rise of right-wing extremism, all that deserves to be tackled head on, but not with a lunatic, not with someone incapable of doing the job he's supposed to do. That is a surrender. It is actually betrayal of those causes.
You said earlier that Americans knew the type of man they were electing, and they elected him. So you're saying that more than half of America was totally wrong.
They were being, I think it's understandable, given the forces in the society, and certainly given the awfulness of his opponent. Look, I have been the most ferocious critic of Hillary Clinton for 25 years. I despise her and what she stands for and what she says she believes in. But I still endorsed her. I went on television and begged people to vote for her.
So what is America going to learn from this experience? We don't know the end yet. We don't know the final chapter. But at this juncture, we're not even a year in. What has America learned, if anything?
My hope is that one day this will be seen as a cautionary tale for letting your emotions and your fears overwhelm your mind and your hopes. That he will become forever a reference point of things we do not want to do again. And I think he's a threat to the Constitution itself. And so far he's been reined in, but it's only 9 months, and things could get a lot worse.
Well, we're going to have a little bit more with Andrew Sullivan right after the break, but on a different topic. The avid pot smoker talks about Canada's legalization.
Céline Dion. She's a big star in France and in her home province of Quebec. She isn't known at all in English Canada, but the young singer could change all that soon.
Whoa, memory blue.
Critics in France and Quebec have called her extraordinary, exceptional, a new international star. What amazes them is her voice and her age. Céline Dion is 15.
Oh, memory blue.
My dream is to be international star.
Offstage, Céline Dion is not unlike most 15-year-old Quebecers. Here she struggles with her very first English interview.
And to be able to sing all my life.
The Dion family, it's musical and it's big. Céline is the youngest of 14 children. She's sung practically since she could talk. At 12, she became professional. At 14, she won the World Song Contest in Japan. At 15, she's won a gold record in France, the first Canadian ever to do it. Now she's at the top of the European song charts. And in Montreal, in the streets or here at a baseball game, she's a celebrity. So in Quebec and Europe, she's a star. But on Yonge Street in Toronto, she'd hardly get a second glance. That's expected to change. Tom Kennedy, CBC News, Montreal.
J'attendais ce moment depuis très longtemps.
I've waited a long time for this, says Céline Dion, the reigning pop diva, at a rare hometown performance in Montreal. But Montreal is not home for Dion anymore. She's nowhere long enough to unpack her bags. Every moment is given over to the business of selling Céline Dion. Ironically, the stage is her only sanctuary.
I love being on stage. It's because every day, everybody's telling me what to do and talk about this and don't mention this yet and don't forget to talk about that and don't forget this and, you know, don't do this, don't do that. But on stage, nobody has the guts to come on stage and tell me what to do.
Andrew Sullivan has blogged about more than President Trump. Recently, he wrote a commentary about his own regular use of marijuana, the good and the bad. With Canada moving towards legalization, we wanted to know his take on Canada's move. Andrew, I want to switch gears, do a hard left turn here for a moment, because I don't get to talk to you on a regular basis. And we have something coming up in this country that you know something about. We're legalizing dope. You're a self-described stoner. What do we need to know about legalizing marijuana in Canada that you have discovered in the United States as a regular user of marijuana?
Don't worry about it. It's certainly less worrisome than anybody drinking alcohol.
But you did say that you wrote that stats say that the greater number of adults are using it on a daily basis, much greater than people are drinking on a daily basis, that demographic has grown.
There is a small minority of marijuana use, cannabis users, who use a disproportionate amount of the marijuana taken. And some of that is for all sorts of reasons. For mine, it's insomnia. For other people, and certainly when I started, it was for nausea from HIV medications. But it's also so that I can better listen to music, that I can unwind at the end of the day. I think it's vital and important that we protect young people from this. And my belief in legalization is precisely because I think it's a better way of keeping weed out of the hands of the developing mind, which it can adversely affect and impair.
Has that borne out in the states that have legalized it?
It actually has. And that's been the interesting data that's come across. That in fact, teen use of marijuana in America has been declining and continued to decline under legalization.
But you use the word dependence in your writing about marijuana. That I wondered if that was a concern then of yours, that dependence maybe is not a good thing for a regular
No, maybe I'm dependent on caffeine and coffee to get up in the morning. I use coffee to get up in the morning and marijuana to go to sleep at night. I'm dependent on both. But we're not having anxious debates about whether Starbucks should be legal or not. It's a question of perspective here. And it's also a question of the costs of prohibition, which are enormous. The number of people who are thrown in jail or have criminal records that really should not have non-violent drug offenders is an absolute disaster. And I think many adults in a lot of responsible places and many responsible parents can use this in a responsible, mature, and adult way as a way to enhance their lives. But this is a rather minor shift. I think it's an enormously positive one. I'm terribly excited that Canada is leading the way on this.
Although there's a bit of a rocky road ahead getting to the legalization with the legislation and the provincial, federal, and the tax, and it's a bit of a
yes, and I think you have
road.
to actually be careful about that. I think you have to make sure that the regulations are good, that young people are prevented from access to it, and that we tax it the right way. And so far, I would say, the experience in Washington and Colorado, for example, has been way better than even those of us who wanted it expected.
That's our conversation with Andrew Sullivan, author, commentator, and blogger. Up next, mainstream love for a Canadian YouTube hit.
It reaches a larger audience. It reaches countries where being queer is sometimes illegal.
It's also rewriting the traditional way a movie gets funded. That's next on The National.
Leonard Cohen is a Canadian poet, novelist, and despite an air of frail vulnerability, he's a very confident young man.
I feel free when I'm singing.
Do you make up your own songs?
I always thought of myself as a singer and kind of got sidetracked into literature.
Can you sing?
Well, I think that if the song is really good and it's your own, then what comes out is music.
But now another stranger seems to want you to ignore his dreams as though they were the burden of another.
Oh, yes. Well, I'd feel pretty lousy if I were praised by a lot of the people that have come down pretty heavy on me.
Cannot stand what I become. You much prefer the gentleman I was before.
Well, I always felt that my work was more eccentric, and that if it touched the mainstream from time to time, I would be lucky.
I remember you well in the Chelsea Hotel. You were famous, your heart was a legend.
All right, it is Miss
Mr. Leonard Cohen!
You know, it's only in a country like this that I could get the male vocalist of the year.
On the polka dots, and his partner found and his partner, and his hell to pay when the fiddler stopped. Well, I don't know, people have called me pessimistic, you know, but I think the pessimist is someone who's waiting for it to rain, you know, and I feel completely soaked to the skin, so. It's clothes and sometimes I see myself in the midst of it, or I catch sight of myself in the mirror, you know, this old guy in his underwear, you know, kind of trying to find the rhyme for orange, and, you know, playing the same phrase on his guitar 15, 20, 90 times, trying to get it right. There's something absurd about that, but, you know, the nature of work is repetition.
And do you come up with a rhyme for orange?
Door hinge.
to the end of love. Dance with me to the end of love.
I was the wrestling champion of the world.
And he's the best in the world at what he does.
Until I lost it all.
You got fired from wrestling, right?
Now I'm starting over and I'm
Free at last!
And I'm gonna be the greatest actor of all time.
I want to study the craft of acting.
If I can get you waiting tables, you'll really be an actor.
Agent is a jackass.
Let's see what you got.
Prepare for glory!
Told you he has brain damage.
No, I don't have brain damage.
But I'm Chris Jericho.
This week, an unlikely film heads to a few Canadian theatres. It has a vampire storyline with feminist undertones, but that isn't the unusual part. Rather, it's how a YouTube series with millions of fans worldwide went mainstream while keeping its new media heartbeat. Stephanie Van Kampen explains.
Natasha
Natasha Van Lys winning the Fan Choice Award at the Canadian Screen Awards earlier this year.
Most of you are wondering who the heck I am.
But not the millions of YouTube fans who know her as Carmilla, a lesbian vampire.
What kind of trouble do you think I could possibly get into? Oh, I have all kinds of thoughts about that.
Carmilla, based on a 19th century novella, began streaming on YouTube in 2014 as a low-budget scripted series. 5-minute episodes tell the lesbian love story of a university student who falls for a vampire. A story the cast says would have likely been rejected by a traditional television network.
Because it is a digital series, it reaches a larger audience. It reaches countries where being queer is sometimes illegal or where it's not spoken about. So Carmilla sort of provided this safe haven and this online community.
The show took a radically different approach. They shot an entire season in just 4 days, all from one static camera angle.
What we didn't realize when we set off was that we were actually creating a brand. You know, we weren't just creating some content. We were actually creating a brand, and it was a global brand. So, you know, 3 seasons later, 193 countries in the world, translated into 20 languages. What can you do next?
What's next is a full-length feature film, taking this little Canadian production with a worldwide fan base and preparing to bite into traditional media.
Welcome back, Grandpa.
Ready and action.
But even in her big screen debut, Carmilla is breaking the rules. A third of the movie budget came directly from fans who pre-ordered digital copies. This week, they'll get a chance to watch Carmilla in the theater. The film will play for just one night in 30 cities across Canada on Thursday. Available online starting the next day.
Did you really think there'd be no consequences?
Stephanie Van Kampen, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the National for this Sunday night. You can also always check out news on our website, cbcnews.ca. I am Susan Ormiston. Good night.